Hello, everyone. Welcome to this public live Q&A. This is the first time I've been in a public live Q&A on this channel for a long time, and I'm so excited to get to spend some time with you guys. This has just been a long time coming, and it's amazing to be, I don't want to say celebrating the milestone because I'm not sure if we should be celebrating so many people needing help with dizziness, but we're marking the milestone. Let's put it that way. And I see so many of you here in the chat already. Hello, Gina. Jody, hi. Hello, Lisa. Hello, RJF. Hello, Lorraine and VT Sullivan. Hello, Megan, Brianne, Martin. So many of you guys, I know you came. Thank you, Megan, Kathy, Amy. Hello. Amy sending me buckets of love and gratitude, but not stress for my stress bucket. So that's good. I appreciate that. Thank you, Amy. Hello, Liv. Hello. Is that Gerda? Hello, Gerda, Rachel, and Christian. Hello. Thank you for coming, Christian and Rachel. And let's see. Wild is Life, Julie, Eileen, Paula, Chris. Hello, Sophia, Caitlin. I'm just going to keep reading names and then it's just going to keep going. So I probably should stop. Hello, Stacy. Good to see you. Stacy, one of our graduates. Another Megan, Crystal, MP4223. Hello. Okay, I'm going to stop reading names because you guys aren't here for me to read all the names. You're here for me to answer some questions, I think. And yeah, I'm going to jump into that in just a second. Obviously, the first and most important thing I need to do while I'm here is to thank you guys. That is like just the least descriptive words I could use, but I can't think of better words. My life has changed dramatically because of the work that I'm doing. You have made this possible. I'm actually coming off this week of working really, really hard on this course that I'm building for medical professionals and other healthcare practitioners because I want to reach as many people as possible. That's always been the goal, to make sure that I'm helping as many people as possible. And if I can't reach them directly, I need to reach them through their medical practitioners or their healthcare providers. So you have made it possible for me to work on that, and you remind me every day how important it is, and that's been very helpful this last week when I'm tearing my hair out and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do this because it's just so much. But then I see your comments on the YouTube channel, I see your names here in the chat, and I'm like, okay, it needs to happen. These people, if you tell me in the chat, if your medical provider had told you on day one, this is something you can recover from, this is just a neural circuit problem, it is real, the symptoms are not in your head, it's not just anxiety, but this is reversible and it's not something you have to live with forever, would that have made a difference for you? Tell me if that would have made a difference for you. If it would have, then that is going to just push me further to get this course done, because practitioners need to know how to talk to you guys. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm just seeing such wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you so much, Mona. And yes, Eileen says that would have made a huge difference. Carol said that would have made a difference. Martin said it would have made a difference. Lorraine, Sherry, Christian, Paula, Rachel, Brianne, Carol, all of you are saying yes, yes, yes. Okay, thank you. I'm just taking all that in so that I have like at least 10 hours of work I've got to get done over the next day or two to make sure I meet this particular deadline. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I know, again, it would have been better if you had heard this from your medical providers, but now we are going to give you all the hope that you need today. You're going to get a big dose of hope from me and from the other people in the chat. So I'm going to be trying to keep my eye on the chat. I'm going to be answering some questions that were asked in advance, but I'm also going to be pulling interesting questions from the chat. So please feel free to ask any of your questions here. And again, I'll start with some questions that were asked in advance, but I'm here for you guys. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about today. And it's just amazing. Hello, Sheena. Good to see you guys. Thank you guys so much for the messages of support. It just means everything to me. Thank you so much. Yeah. So it's just I'm seeing all these messages here. I would have lived for 7 years with help instead of no hope. Wow. Just incredible. Yeah. Yeah. A million times. Yes. And I'm going to put this on the screen because Lynn said this earlier in our group call the other day. It was on Tuesday. She said, what did you say? How did you say it exactly, Lynn? You said something like, uh, you hold on to that spark of hope and let Dr. Yo pour the gas on the flame, right? Something like that. It was so beautifully said. Okay. Oh, awesome. Miroslav's back at work. Amazing. Oh my gosh. Mona says, once my PT told me I have PPPD, she said, I'm chronic and just work on having good days. Amazing. Thank you, Betty. Betty saying hello from Denmark. Okay. So again, I could just keep talking to you guys the entire time, but I'm going to pull some questions that were asked in advance. We're just going to start with those. And then I'm just going to listen to what you have to say in the chat, follow you. And I may have some surprises for you over the next couple of hours. So if you are going to be hanging out with us for the next 2 hours, that's how long I've planned this Q&A for, you may see some other familiar faces here, just saying. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with this. Okay, so Jan2319 here on YouTube asked, is it still possible if the dizziness is coming from ear problems or somewhere else? Can it still get better? I've tried neck, eyes, and vestibular. Okay, so I know many of you who are watching this channel are not new to my work at all, so some of this is going to be a total refresher, but I'm also hoping some of you out there are new viewers. Raise your hand if you're a new viewer. Put something in the chat if you're brand new to my work and you're like, what the heck is going on here? So I'm going to try to, when I'm answering my questions, make sure my answers are comprehensible to people who are newer to my work, but also make sense and give some new information or helpful information to those of you who've been here for a while. So one common misconception that people have when they find my work, or the idea that neuroplastic or neural circuit symptoms exist in the first place, is that what we're saying is that these symptoms are fake or that they're all in your head, or that they don't correspond to something having gone wrong physically in your body. And that is not true. From my experience, first of all, I could go into a whole thing right now about predictive coding and how the brain gives you sensation and perception. And we're not going to get into that just yet, although I'm sure I'll get into this later. But what I want to answer to you, Jan, is that when I look at the number of people who I've worked with and who I come in contact with through the YouTube channel and through other various communication channels, I would say a solid maybe 30% of you, maybe more, actually had your symptoms start with some kind of physical injury or problem. So some of you had vestibular neuritis, so you had inflammation in your inner ear, or you had BPPV, or you had a concussion, or you had some kind of head injury, or you had something else go wrong. Maybe the doctors never identified it initially, or maybe there was some kind of neck injury, maybe you had whiplash. Whatever it was, it's extremely common for people to actually have something that went physically wrong, and that thing be the reason that their symptoms started. The thing is, our brains are adaptable. So brains are always filtering out information from our bodies and only presenting the information to you that the brain thinks is important. That's how brains work. You're getting so much information from the outside world. You're getting so much information from your body all the time. Your brain has to make an informed decision about what it draws your attention to and what it presents to you as the things that you feel or experience. So what often will happen is someone will have something like vestibular neuritis, or, some kind of neck injury, or whatever it is. And it may be that change in someone's body doesn't go away. It may be something that is now different. So with vestibular neuritis, sometimes people, for example, end up with a weakness in one ear that just doesn't go away. But the brain knows how to recalibrate. It knows how to say, oh, I'm not getting the same information from this ear that I used to be getting, but this ear is still working okay. So now I'm just going to rebalance my expectations, and you come back to steadiness. Likewise, if you had a neck injury, tissue damage heals. And once that tissue damage has healed, your brain says, cool, we're good now. We can go back to being steady. When someone has a neural circuit dizziness problem, what's happening is the brain just isn't readapting. It's being rigid. It's expecting you to continue to have an ear problem or a neck problem. And so it's not adjusting the expectations it has in a way that helps you be steady. So That's a long way of saying yes to your question. Your question is, can it still get better if I had something physical that set this off? Absolutely. I see it all the time. I cannot even count the number of people I've worked with who had ear damage or weakness or some other medical abnormality that started their symptoms and go on to live completely normal symptom free lives. So, yes. Okay, I'm just going to head back over to the chat and let's see. Yep. Yep. Oh, wow. This is wonderful to hear. So Phil says, I was told by ENT I would have PPPD forever and just get used to it. So I flopped on the couch for 2.5 years. I saw your video over Christmas describing it as perceived dizziness and a switch. So I'm assuming you're saying a switch went off. It probably cut you off there. It flipped in my brain. Now working on it and improving daily. Thank you, Phil, for saying that. It goes back to the, I guess we've already established a theme for this Q&A, which is you guys reminding me that I need to keep working on this course that I'm building for medical practitioners because I'm like, it's so much. But this is why, because Phil, you had 2.5 years of this, and it is one of the most heartbreaking things that I hear from people. The thing that really fills me with the fire of injustice is when people tell me, yeah, I had to go on YouTube to figure out how to get better because everyone said I was hopeless. I mean, I'm happy I'm here. I'm happy I'm here on YouTube and I will be here for you guys, but I don't think anyone should have to go to YouTube to find answers like this. I think you should just be told initially, hey, you can get better. That to me is a much better outcome. So thank you for sharing your story. And Theodora, hello. Theodora's doing so much better. So amazing. Wonderful. Okay. Great. Let's start with this question from Sophia from the chat. And Stacy, you're so sweet. Oh my gosh, you guys are saying the nicest things in the chat. If any of you need to feel good, there is a lot of love going on in the chat right now. Okay, so Sophia asks, what advice would you give people trying to go back to work or getting a new job while still dealing with 24/7 intense symptoms? Okay, so first things first, I want you to sort of hear my general framing about this and to say, first of all, you're not alone. If you look in the chat, you will see many people like you who've been faced with a decision like this. And I'm saying all this because me validating you isn't just about making you feel good. Hope is medicine. Connection is medicine. If the problem that's leading to neural circuit dizziness is threat, right? Your brain perceiving threat, the medicine that inoculates you, that treats threat is hope and connection, safety, things that give you safety. So Sophia, I'm just giving you a tiny little dose of safety maybe by telling you that all 100 and something people who are here in the chat right now understand what you're going through, and many of them have been faced with similar experiences. So you are very much not alone. Okay, so starting with that. So I think many of you have probably seen the short that I put out recently about how I'm saying don't wait, don't wait till you feel better. So Sophia is probably operating under that advice. I've often said you don't, people, the tendency people have, because the symptoms obviously feel so awful, is to just want to wait for them to get better before you go out and do things. And the reality is, in most cases, what needs to happen is you need to be able to go out and do things despite not feeling good. And that act of courage and taking charge of your life and doing things with safety is actually what helps promote recovery and helps you move farther along in your recovery. So, okay. So, Sophia, what comes to mind when you ask this question is there are a few things that I'd want to see from someone before they go back to work. Okay. Number one, I'd want them to have some skills. So while I just said that it's important to get back to life, and that is a really important part of recovery, the exposure that you get from going back to work is going to be much more effective when you're doing it in a way that helps your brain learn new things. And what helps your brain learn new things is when it has new experiences instead of the experiences that it's currently expecting. So right now, your brain is expecting things to go really badly, and it's expecting when intense symptoms happen for you to react with fear. And it's also expecting that when you react with fear, you're also going to react poorly to the fear or try to resist the fear, because all of us do. Fear feels like a terrible thing. So that's kind of our natural response to fear a lot of the time. And those are your brain's expectations, and those are sort of the expectations that are that are helping lock symptoms in place. So what that means is if you have intense 24-hour a day symptoms, you want to build some skills that help you learn to react to both symptoms and fear. So fear in all its forms. So both the that you get if you have a symptom flare in a moment, and also the doubts, the intrusive thoughts, the what ifs that come with the fear, the anxiety sensations that come with the fear, all of that stuff. You should have some kind of tool for knowing how to react to it or respond to it in a different way. And why? Because that's what helps the brain learn. If your brain has a certain set of expectations, you can write down what you think your brain's expectations are, and then you can write down what would be different from my brain's expectations. So for many people, this looks like somatic tracking. The exercise that we use to develop this skill is somatic tracking. And I just want to say that with somatic tracking, a lot of people think you have to do this as some kind of prolonged meditation. And you can, by all means. I have an entire brain exercises playlist. I'll pop that in the chat. You can certainly use it as a prolonged meditation if you like that, but you don't have to. The purpose of somatic tracking is actually learning a skill. So you can use one of these exercises to kind of pick up the skill and start to practice the skill. That playlist is now posted in the chat. And learn basically what I'm trying to teach you, which is how to see a sensation or see fear or see a reaction that you're having, and then let it happen without trying to resist it and follow it instead of following a thought and catastrophizing, knowing what to do with that instead, which again, it looks a lot more like not resisting. I'm getting ahead of myself. When you practice that skill, eventually you can start to apply it in a way that I call in situ. So in the moment, when you're at work, when you're at a friend's house, when you're making breakfast, whatever it is, if a sensation flare happens, or if the sensations are constant and you are dealing with them all the time, you take moments where you practice the skill of responding differently from how you used to. And in every moment that you do that, you are giving your brain a stimulus, a little poke. Hey, learn something. We're learning something new now. This is different from what we thought. So that's kind of category one, which is where you're working on responding more neutrally to sensations. And this is a skill that you want to build, Sophia, ideally before you throw yourself back in work. So this is something you should have on your tool belt before you put yourself in a new situation, I think. The other thing is the stress bucket related stuff. So I actually have a video on this. So I'm going to put that in the chat for you. It's called, let me see if I can find it. It was a little while ago that I had this video, maybe a couple of years ago, and it's not finding it. One second. Okay, so yeah, it's called Work Stress and Going Back to Work in Neural Circuit Symptom Recovery. So I'm going to put this in the chat. So if you do not see the chat, Sophia, what you can do is just search my YouTube channel for a video called Work Stress and Going Back to Work. It has a yellow background. I look very perturbed in the picture, and it's called Work-Related Stress During Recovery. That's what the title says on the thumbnail. If you watch that video, it'll address sort of the stress bucket stuff that you might need to work on before you go back to work. And yes, so a question here from Meta. Hello, Meta. She says, can I see this session again later? Yes, you'll be able to find this on my YouTube channel. I believe it'll just be under lives, which is somewhere on my YouTube channel main screen. Sorry, guys, I can't, I'll have to look at it. I don't remember exactly where it is. Let's see. Yeah, so if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a home button and then videos, shorts, and live. If you click live, it'll let you rewatch this, and I may post it elsewhere to make it easier to find. So yes, absolutely, you'll be able to access this later. Although it'd be awesome if you could stay. I understand not everyone can hang out with me for 2 hours. Okay, so question from Ashley. So she says, hey, I'm a little confused about if your course will be right for me. I don't have constant dizziness. I have spurts of vertigo, but my 24/7 symptoms are forehead, head, and face pressure. Ashley, you are asking an excellent question, and we're going to be talking a lot about non-dizziness symptoms today. Little preview for those of you who are going to be hanging out the whole time. We're going to be talking a little bit about tinnitus, in a little while, we're going to be talking about bladder symptoms. Some of you have bladder symptoms. We're going to be talking about pain a little bit. And one of the big messages I think I'm going to be conveying today is, while I focus on dizziness because all of you who do have dizziness, frankly, did not have dizziness specific information, and dizziness specific information is very important. And I'm called the steady coach for a reason. I'm going to be working with dizziness because that's my area of specialty. However, the general principles that I use on this channel are absolutely appropriate for medically unexplained chronic symptoms that are anywhere in your body, because ultimately, if the symptoms are coming from your brain and your brain is sort of the target of the recovery plan that you need to use, then it's the same stuff. It's just going to be the stuff that's not dizziness specific. And I would say like 90% of the content that I have on my channel, about 90% of the stuff in the course, maybe 80%, is relevant to people who don't have dizziness. There are parts that are very specific to vestibular stuff. And I also, of course, mention dizziness specifically in all of my somatic tracking exercises. But please don't feel like you're not welcome here or that this stuff won't work for you if your main symptoms are not dizziness. Because in fact, a lot of people who have chronic pain, fibromyalgia, CFS, long COVID will often have other primary symptoms, but also dizziness along with them. It's just that dizziness isn't their primary symptom. And it all ends up being kind of the same thing. It's a neural circuit issue that is being caused by the brain being overly sensitive to information from to triggers and then also to symptoms. And then it's sort of getting confused about what sensory information means. So what information from various sense systems mean. So for you, if it's forehead, head, and face, it may be that your brain is using touch information. So information from the sense of touch in a way that isn't optimal. Whereas for someone who has dizziness, it may be related more to the eyes or the ears. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, and another question here about dosing graded exposure in PPPD. So how do I dose graded exposure in PPPD when responses are delayed and capacity varies day to day? This is such a thorny question because this depends a lot on the severity of your symptoms. For most of the people that I work with, who have symptoms that are in many cases, extremely debilitating. It is very, very common, RK, for people to have this sort of delay. The first thing I have to say is when there's a delay like this, I urge you to categorize this as evidence that this is a neural circuit problem, okay? Because if you had a physical tissue problem, the symptoms wouldn't wait for 3 days, right? This is only a neural circuit problem. Which brings me to kind of the next point I want to make, that sometimes we get into this pattern of symptoms showing up 2 days later or 1 day later or 3 days later because we start to anticipate it. It's a conditioning question. It's not really that it's so related to the activity that you're doing. It's more that you're used to this pattern, so you expect this pattern, and then your brain happily obliges because brains use predictive processing, meaning I know I mentioned I was going to get into this earlier, so here we are. Brains don't just respond to things that are going on in your environment. They predict what's going to happen and then give you it's their best guess at what is actually happening based on its predictions and what's coming in from the outside. So what that means is if your brain expects this to go wrong every 3 days, it's going to go wrong every 3 days. And that sort of brings me back to Sophia's question about work. You have to sort of counter that by having a new experience on that third day. And that new experience may not be symptom specific because you can't directly control symptoms, but you can control how you respond to the symptoms and how you respond to any fear and anxiety that show up. So if you respond to that third day phenomenon by saying, oh my gosh, I overdid it again. Oh no, here it is. And feeling really frustrated and angry at the symptoms, or being really scared and avoiding more and taking it really easy because you're afraid, that sort of gives your brain the message, hey, actually, you're right. This actually was a bad thing. This third day thing is really real. It's bad. It's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you respond differently from how you have been, and again, I just invite you, you maybe have been responding in a wonderful way, RK, but I'd invite you to just write down some ways that you have been responding and ask yourself, were these ways of responding giving my brain the message that I'm okay, or was it giving my brain the message that this is bad and not a good thing that this is happening? And if the latter, then how can you respond to sensations, fear, and other phenomena a little differently so that your brain can learn something new? Now, as far as capacity varying day to day, this is a little bit of a tricky thing, because I'm going to give you two different ways of thinking about this, and all of you, this is another overarching message of this Q&A. I invite all of you to please, as much as possible, try to view your recovery process as a series of experiments. Okay. There's a reason why I don't have one video that says, these are the 10 steps everyone needs to follow for recovery or else. Okay. I don't have a video like that because it never looks the same for two different people. And part of that is because it's not about what you're doing. It's about how you're doing it. It is not about the specific tool you're using. There are many good tools. It's about how you're using the tool and how the tool is affecting you personally and your nervous system personally. And that looks different for different people. So for some people, when your capacity varies day to day, it works okay to just do what you can each day. And on days when your body's like, I'm just not feeling it today, then you take it a little easier. For some people, that really works. For other people, that leads to this cycle of pushing really hard when you feel good. And then your brain being like, whoa, that was a lot. I'm not used to this. Your stress bucket overflowing. And then you ending up feeling really awful the next day and having a harder time meeting the symptoms, the fear, whatever it is that's going on, in a way that's actually productive or helps your brain learn new things, right? I like to say you want to challenge yourself, but you don't want to overwhelm yourself if at all possible. Although I want to say always an exception here for people with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or high levels of health anxiety. Sometimes you develop a fear of overwhelm. And then I say, actually, it is actually important for you to feel overwhelmed at times, but that's a nuance. We'll probably get into OCD and health anxiety a little bit more later, but coming back to our capacity question. So for some people, because it sort of leads to this cycle over and over, you need to keep your activity relatively constant and consistent. So you may feel really good and you don't push yourself really hard on days when you feel good, and you may feel really bad and you don't back off on your activities just because you're feeling bad. And then you gradually build that up over time to keep your levels of activity more consistent. This creates safety, because I don't know how many of you out there have toddlers or pets. Anyone have toddlers or pets, or children in general? But anyone who has toddlers, pets, or I don't know, is a human, knows that generally humans respond to schedule, especially pets. And well, I guess humans are not pets, but children respond to schedules in a way that's positive. It helps them know what to expect. It helps keep their time predictable, and that helps them feel safe. Nervous systems like safety too. And what is safety? Safety is the medicine that we are applying to this threat response cycle that is leading to chronic symptoms. So when you keep your routine relatively consistent from day to day, that creates sort of an external envelope of safety that is really low cost for you. You don't have to do anything special for it besides sticking to your routine. And it helps just sort of even out some of those bumps that you're describing. And so now I'm going to close this comment out, and I have a bit of a surprise for you guys. I didn't say that this was going to happen during the Q&A, but I have a guest here. Hello. So Pippa is joining me. Hello, Pippa.
Hello. Hi. Congratulations.
There we go. Hello. Good to see you. Hi.
Hi. Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is so exciting. Such a big honor. Well done.
I know. Thank you. And we have been having a lot of fun. I know you were backstage for a little while, so you heard me yammering on about schedules and consistent routines and all that stuff. And I know what a nice surprise it is, Pippa. So Pippa actually, I asked her to just hang out with us for a little while. So Pippa will be here for a few minutes answering some questions. And we have a couple in that some of you asked in advance that we thought would be really useful for Pippa to answer. But please also feel free to comment in the chat if you have anything you'd like us to talk about while Pippa's here with us. So Pippa, let me pull up some of the questions that we earmarked. Okay, I alluded to this already in the Q&A. Pippa, I've been getting these questions about whether the techniques that we talk about on the channel apply to other symptoms. So this question from Kelly S9584 here on YouTube was, is it okay to replace dizziness with tinnitus or other symptoms? I'd love your take on that.
So yes. I mean, like you said, most of your videos are quite generic, right? There's the odd one.
Pippa.
No, but you know what I mean? They're not like just for this. There's the odd one, like Meniere's. They might not want to watch that, right? Someone with just tinnitus might not want to watch a Meniere's video. Or they might not want to watch a hyperfunction, vestibular hyperfunction video. But most of them, most of the videos they find really, really helpful, to the point where a lot of the videos that we included in the course for tinnitus and hyperacusis are actually, they're videos you made for dizziness, right?
Yep.
And we put them in there because they're so relevant and so helpful for people with tinnitus and sound sensitivity.
Absolutely. So is that your suggestion then for Kelly, is to just maybe, if she's taking the free course? First of all, we have a course now. For those of you who don't know, Pippa and I created a course for tinnitus. So I'll put that in the chat. Look at me remembering to do things. Okay, steadycoach.com/tinnitus for those of you who want the tinnitus course. It's completely free. But yes, if you're taking the dizziness course, or you're like, wow, I love this YouTube channel, I want to learn more about this stuff, then what would you suggest? Just replace, kind of in her mind, just replacing the word dizziness with tinnitus?
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
And just for the record, because obviously I don't work with as much tinnitus since I am focusing my entire being on dizziness, vestibular issues, and these other multisensory problems. When you work with people with tinnitus, are the techniques that I talk about on the channel pretty much the same? Like, is it the same stuff that you're doing with them?
It is pretty much the same stuff. I mean, obviously there's a bit of nuance with sound therapy, with hearing aids for certain people in certain contexts. But we discuss all this stuff in the free course, don't we? So there are certain things that are a little bit symptom specific, but the most important stuff is not, right? The most important stuff is all the other things you talk about on your channel, is the reality of it, the stuff that's going to really change their life long term, rather than in the short term while they're deciding when and when not to play a sound to help.
Okay, thank you. For the record, I would say the most important thing is that there's hope. Would you say? Yeah. And it's the same hope that we're offering people with dizziness or visual symptoms. It's the same thing. It's a brain prediction problem, and that's something that's a software issue and can be addressed. It's not something you're just stuck with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's not the message a lot of people get, unfortunately. But yeah.
Oh yeah, especially. Well, that kind of leads me to another tinnitus question. We have a lot of questions about tinnitus, but I'll pull up this one. So Marianne was asking, sort of along those lines, do you think tinnitus can be part of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, that is something I've seen quite a bit of, actually. Obviously, there are lots of people with tinnitus who don't have PTSD, but yes. So the traumatic event teaches the brain that the world is not a safe place. Otherwise, how could this terrible thing happen, right? So then suddenly it goes on high alert, looking for danger everywhere because it does not feel safe. And then it's more likely to misinterpret the safe sounds in the hearing system or head as a danger signal. And then the other thing is that when you go through a traumatic event, the part of the brain that timestamps the memory the emotional part of the memory goes offline. So then if anything's vaguely emotionally similar, as well as getting like PTSD flashbacks that you think of traditionally, you can also get like somatic emotional flashbacks of just like, just because something's emotionally similar and it's triggering the emotions from them from then, and maybe the things to try block those emotions as well as the emotions that are coming up in the present moment. So then again, all of that is more high alert in the nervous system. So processing through the traumatic event and working through the emotions, and ideally in a way that uses memory consolidation, which is something you talk a lot about on your channel.
I'm so pleased you brought that up. Yes. Don't be frightened. If you're new to my channel and you're like, they're talking about memory reconsolidation. What is that? Do I need to know that to recover? No, most of you don't need that. But yes, we can talk about it more today. Thank you, Pippa.
Yeah. But then that means that the brain can kind of, process all of that, and you're just dealing with today's stress when we're in emotional events, rather than like the double whammy of then and now at once, which just feels.
Lucy's saying hi to you in the chat, by the way.
Hi, Lucy.
and many others, but I just want to point out Lucy, because I know you know Lucy well. Hi Lucy. And what time of night is it for Lucy, who is joining us live? Okay, yeah. Just saying. Okay, so
have you got anything you wanted to add to that?
Onto that, not specifically about tinnitus. I guess I feel like it is my responsibility here to say, for those of you here without tinnitus or who have dizziness as a primary symptom, that similarly, it can be part of PTSD as well. It does not mean you have PTSD if you have chronic dizziness or tinnitus, but when your nervous system, it all kind of fits into the stress bucket metaphor, which, Pippa, you and I talk about a lot. When your stress bucket is full of dense stuff, and it's really full because you've had a traumatic experience, then it's more likely to just be overflowing in response to normal life stressors. And when your bucket is overflowing, your brain starts to think of a lot of things as dangerous, including things that aren't actually dangerous, like a trigger for dizziness or a tinnitus sound. And then because your brain starts tagging those things as dangerous, you start perceiving them more. Your brain says, oh, I better amplify this. I better turn the volume dial up on this sensation or this trigger or this tinnitus sound. So that's why I like to use the stress bucket metaphor, because for those of you without PTSD, it still fits in the same, it still fits in that same conceptual understanding. But PTSD is sort of an extreme example of a very rigid and full stress bucket. Yeah. Okay. So we have a question in the chat that I think maybe we should tackle, because I feel like this is just such a good one. Where is it? I meant to tag it and then I forgot. So, okay. I think we should tag team this one, because it's such a good question. So Vicky's asking, please tell me when I should stop an exposure. Can I do it every day? Can I do too much? Specifically walking, as it feels unbalanced and I'm scared. And I feel like this could also apply to sound exposure too, for those of you with hyperacusis. Do you want me to take a stab at it first, or do you want to answer first?
I don't mind. I'm just like, reading it. Yeah, because it's rough. It's hard.
It is rough. Yes.
So, flights analogy. Can I do the flights analogy?
Absolutely. Yes, please. Pippa has all sorts of famous little stories that she tells.
This is Alan Gordon's. But I like to steal it. Yeah, it's from The Way Out book, if anyone wants to read that. Basically,
I'll put that in the chat in case anyone hasn't seen it.
So in order to teach our brain that the sensations are safe, that the situation is safe, the things that we're approaching or exposing ourselves to are safe, like in order to teach yourself that anything's safe, you have to approach it, right? So if you were scared of flying, never got on a flight, you could never get over the fear of flying. If you were scared of flying and you got on the flight and you had a nice smooth flight, maybe watched a film, you'd get off the other end and think, oh, flying wasn't as bad as I thought it was. That would be what we call a corrective experience. That would reduce your fear of flying, and then next time it would feel easier. If you got on the flight and there was turbulence and the oxygen mask dropped down and everyone was screaming, we're all going to die, you would get off that flight more scared of flying than you were before. And then you probably wouldn't want to get on another one again. It would feel worse, right? So we want to approach these exposures in a way that is going to increase the chance of the corrective experience, the smooth flight, and reduce the chance of the turbulent flight. And that is more about how strong you are feeling in yourself than it is on the level of symptoms.
That's a great point. Highlighting this. Hang on, pause. Everyone, please hear what Pippa just said. It has a lot more to, and I'm going to use your words, it has a lot more to do with how strong you're feeling in yourself than it is about the level of symptoms. So if you're trying to make these decisions based on how yucky the symptoms feel, I want you to think about this instead, how capable you feel of containing the symptoms or the fear or the anxiety that come with the symptoms.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me interrupt you. I'm sorry.
No, go for it. Yeah, so one day you could have really high symptoms, but feel really empowered and strong. And I really want to do this. And I know that doing this is the kindest thing for me. And I really want to be there or whatever. And then you can end up with a smooth flight. You can do it. You can feel great. And even if you feel high symptoms, you feel strong and empowered at the end of it anyway, because you did it. And then another day you could have quite low symptoms, but just be like overwhelmed and struggling in life, and you're pushing and ignoring in a way, but just getting overwhelmed. And then you end up with a turbulent flight, and then that's not a great way to be. And then everything feels worse, and then it makes it even harder to do that thing again. Everyone's going to have turbulent flights though. So if you have a turbulent one, don't beat yourself up for it. Always self-compassion, take care of yourself, recover, and do it again when you're feeling better. Well, yes, by better, more strong and empowered, not necessarily symptom-wise.
That's right. And for I want to point something out, because I can just hear the anxiety sometimes when people hear this. They say, oh my gosh, what if I only have turbulent flights? What if I'm re-traumatizing myself by having poor reactions every time? And that's when, again, that's why it's so important not necessarily to focus on the stuff that you can't control, like directly the sensations or the initial response you might have to sensations, or the initial response you have to sensations. You are in charge of what happens from there. And that's what determines whether it's a turbulent flight or not. So unlike a turbulent flight where you can't control anything the other passengers are doing or what the pilot's doing or the turbulence in the air, you have a lot of agency and power over what you do in response to sensations or your automatic reactions. Yeah.
And then with the walk, I guess some days you're going to want to do a shorter walk, and that's okay. And giving yourself permission to do that if that's the kindest thing, rather than I always walk this far, so I absolutely must walk this far, even though I feel like I'm dying inside.
Right. And I'm going to also say though, Vicky, so I'm not trying to contradict what Pippa's saying, but I just want to remind you, if you have neural circuit dizziness, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. There's nothing wrong with your body. So overdoing it, but we're just trying to optimize here. We're trying to make it so everything that you do, because you're working so hard on it and it's hard, we want it to give you the most benefit. But we're not trying to say, oh no, Vicky, if you walk too much, you're going to overdo it and it's going to destroy your recovery. No. Maybe it won't serve you as well as a walk would have served you, where the circumstances were more optimal, but it's not going to harm you. So I think that's the message I want to leave you with. What do you think, Pippa?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so if you feel, oh, I pushed it too hard, you can't push it too hard, can you? You just can't.
Because you're not damaged.
No.
You're not damaged.
No.
Okay, so before you go, we've got time for like one more. All right. So I'm wondering if you might be able to talk about vestibular migraine for a second, because you, Pippa, personally have experience with vestibular migraine. And one day I will get your success story out of you for the channel. I'm just saying, I'll get your success story out of you. But for those of you who don't know, Pippa herself suffered from debilitating vestibular migraines, and probably what we would classify as PPPD, really,
Yeah, it
for
didn't
9
exist
years.
then.
It didn't exist then, which
No.
is what I like to remind people when they're like, oh my gosh, I was told no one ever recovers from PPPD. And I'm like, that's an interesting thing to say when the diagnosis has only existed for like a decade. Just saying, that's an interesting framing on it. But Pippa has personal experience with this, so I think she can speak to this beautifully. So this is from Tori. She asks, I'm having daily vestibular migraine attacks. Does somatic tracking, etc., help with migraine, or does it help more with the dizziness between attacks?
So it absolutely does help with migraine. I guess there's the etc. The etc. is very important. When you are in a massive migraine, somatic tracking may not be the best tool for that moment, because you need to be able to get online a certain amount of curiosity needs around symptoms. And when they're really intense, that's not always the best strategy. And if it's a big migraine, then it's more about self-compassion and what's the kindest thing for me in this moment, and is this kindest thing just to go to bed and not beat myself up about it? And if it is, that's fine. But the etc., the emotional work, the self-compassion, the self-care, the, as you put it, not treating yourself like a jerk.
Yep. That's my catchphrase. Don't be a jerk to yourself, everyone. Yes.
All that stuff will in time reduce the amount of migraine attacks you have and the severity of them, and over time stop them. But it's obviously it's an up and down process, but it will absolutely help you with both. And actually, a lot of people class the dizziness between attacks as migraine as well, so it's a little bit.
That's what I was gonna add. I mean, so
It's all the same thing, right?
Yeah. So in case, Tori, you're asking this question because you're asking if the stuff we're talking about on the channel is helpful for vestibular migraine, absolutely, hands down, no holds barred. It is appropriate and should be used for vestibular migraine. And actually, those of you without vestibular symptoms as well, those of you with just migraine, just saying. So I know there are many of you out there who do not have dizziness specifically, but with what Pippa's saying is that for the actual attack itself, maybe somatic tracking in that moment may not be the most useful technique. Because I personally, and you're alluding to this, Pippa, when I've had a very extreme migraine in the past, I really haven't had one for years, but when I have had one, it's very difficult for me to use a light touch because I'm just in this thing that the sensations are so intense. It's hard for me to be like, oh, here, let me just be curious about this thing. Like it's hard. So if curiosity isn't an option, if neutrality isn't an option, then as you said, going to self-compassion and self-care is probably a good idea if you're in an intense dip, an intense flare of sensations. But I also just want to speak to those of you who are severe all the time and say, just if you have severe symptoms all the time, you can still use these techniques. And it may be that you won't be able to use a light touch perfectly, but you can use a light touch for 5 seconds and then back off. So it's okay. You're not going to, again, big message, you're not going to do damage to yourself by using these techniques, even if you're not doing it ideally. Be a B- student. I tell everyone that. Be a B- student.
But even fighting it a little bit less and not beating yourself up for having a rest can be quite a big deal in itself. There's a very big difference between I've got a migraine, so I've got to lie down, I'm going to lie down there, I'm going to beat myself up the whole time that I'm not with my family and that I'm letting the world down and that I'm not doing this, that, and the other, and that I'm a horrific person. And it's an extra layer of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And also it fuels the symptoms on top of that. So if we can let go of that, then that's a really big step when the symptoms are really severe.
Yes.
As well.
Absolutely.
And just to say, my headaches are gone, my dizziness is gone. I've been recovered for about 9 years. So, yeah.
There, we got a mini success story out of Pippa today, everyone. The peer pressure worked.
Can run on the treadmill, jump on the trampoline, the whole lot. Yeah.
Oh, and I had the privilege of spending some time with Pippa in person, and I can attest to this. I saw Pippa do all sorts of things and balance on things and walk all day long at a frantic pace, might I add, because of certain people in our party who will remain unnamed. But
and we went on swings in the play park.
We went on swings. Yep. And didn't we go on like a spinny thing too? There was I don't know what that particular piece of playground equipment is called, but
it was an amazing park.
It was a remarkable park with a lot of opportunities for vestibular stimulation. Let's put it that way. Yes. Well, Pippa, thank you so much for joining me again. Let me just, since you're here and captive, I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to thank you for everything that you do. You are absolutely incredible. Those of you who have heard any of the success stories know what an incredibly gifted coach Pippa is. She is just remarkable. And having her, Pippa and I are both audiologists, as some of you know, and there are times when I question whether I'm insane. And I know that not all people in my profession agree with my takes on things. And to know that Pippa's always got my back and I've always got hers has made a huge difference. So her support is one reason I'm here too. So be sure to thank Pippa for backing me up and being my friend and my amazing colleague. You are an amazing person. I'm so happy that you're my friend, and we're so lucky to have you as a coach too. It's just, I don't know what I would do without you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. Oh, yeah. And congratulations on this. You're doing
Thank you.
Absolutely amazing. And I'm so proud to be part of your team. And
thank you. I know we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep making a difference. Thank you, Pippa. Have a wonderful.
You're saving people's lives. Like, you're saving people's lives. People who you've never met and you'll never meet. You're like literally saving their lives. That's what it. Yeah. Well done.
We're doing, for those of you who don't know why we're sitting in silence for a second, it's because we're giving each other mental hugs. We can't convey that in words. One day soon in person, hopefully, Pippa. Thank you for being here. You're welcome. Go enjoy your Friday night. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'll see you soon.
Bye. Bye, Pippa.
Everyone. Bye.
Oh my gosh, I know. Pippa's amazing. So we're going to keep going with some questions that have come up in the chat. And we are going to continue answering questions from you guys. And I will also have another guest who will show up in a little while. So if you're here to hang out for the whole Q&A, you will get to see someone else who's a familiar face. Just saying, little surprises for you today, because we're marking a pretty big milestone here. So, okay. So, I love the comments in the chat. Pippa, I hope you're still. She's not here with me backstage anymore, but I hope Pippa's still seeing the chat, because you guys are just sending some beautiful messages. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, for Darla, I see you're asking, does Pippa have a page? So Pippa works with me. So if you'd like to work with Pippa, she actually leads a group coaching session every Monday at 9:30 a.m. UK time in the Steady Coach. So in as part of our coaching group. And it is it is the envy of all of us. For those of us for whom 9:30 a.m. UK time is an absurdly early time and can't attend, we're jealous. So we watch the replays. So if you can't attend her sessions, you can also, if you're in the community, watch the recordings of her sessions, and you get to see Pippa in action, and you get to see exactly how she coaches people who are going through things that you are. So, okay. So I'm going to come back to a question that showed up in the chat earlier that I just thought was really, really good. This is something that comes up a lot. I don't know if Wild as Life is still here. Say hello if you're still here. But the question is, I've had PPPD for 13 years and I've never stopped working full time, playing sport, etc. Can I still recover, as I'm concerned my brain has got itself stuck in this version of coping? So I was actually talking to someone earlier about how I was working with a client who, I don't want to put any personal information out here, but who has had or had symptoms for several decades and was still able to recover. So I will scream this from the hilltops. I don't care how long you've had symptoms. Your brain is always plastic. You always have hope of recovery, always. So for those of you who are out there who have had symptoms for 6 weeks or 6 years or 60 years, I want you to know that your brain is still doing the same thing as people who've had symptoms for less time than you. It is still a programming issue, and brains are always rewiring in response to experience. So the first thing, I guess, that's the first message I want to give you. What you're saying here, though, is a really interesting point, because you're saying, I've been doing all this stuff and I haven't been avoiding anything. And Yonit, you talk a lot about anxiety, you talk a lot about fear, you talk a lot about avoidance. And I've not been doing all of that. I just feel uncomfortable a lot of the time. I'm not enjoying my life. I'm just I've kind of learned to live with them. This does present uh, a little bit of a challenge, because yes, it's not as obvious what you might need to do to recover. So when you have like a massive fear response to your symptoms and you're like, oh, Yonit says that I should be somatic tracking, or I should be, not avoiding things anymore. It's really obvious what you need to do, right? But when you're actually coping really well, some of that stuff becomes a lot more nuanced. So I want you to know, first of all, that I have seen people show up on this channel. Actually, Serafina, I don't know if you saw her recovery story. I'll put that in the chat. Serafina, she didn't have symptoms for 13 years, but she had symptoms for 4 years. So a very significant period of time, not a short period of time. And she was also living her life, just living her life badly. I mean, she was uncomfortable. And she basically recovered from gaining information. Basically, she found my channel. She realized, oh, this is just a prediction problem. This is a software issue. And the symptoms went away. Basically, she quit in the middle of my free course because she didn't need it anymore, because she just got better. So to me, that's the kind of evidence I like to see to back myself up when I say I don't really care how long you've had symptoms. There's always, your brain can always rewire. But for you, it may be a little more complex than just gaining the information. There are kind of two sides to this, or two components of this, that I'd like you to think about. So first of all, does it make sense that this is a neural circuit problem? Do you believe that what you have is a neural circuit problem? I think that that's a really important question. If you have a lot of doubts, if you're sort of on the fence about it, then your brain is still going to respond with the same sort of threat response to symptoms and triggers, and we're not going to break the cycle as effectively as we could. Let's put it that way. So that's one thing. Really, I think the understanding and the belief, there has to be some level of belief that you can actually recover. And for those of you in the chat who are like, I have tons of doubts, I don't know if I believe enough, Yonit, I think I'm screwed. No. So you don't have to have perfect belief. It's just, belief is somewhere along a spectrum. You don't want to be in the heck no, this is not the problem I have category. You want to be somewhere over on the side of, okay, this seems like this would be good. This seems like it makes some sense to me, even if I don't fully believe it. So you want to make sure you're somewhere there. And Wild as Life, the remedy to that particular problem often is just education. So just learning more about it and realizing, collecting evidence for yourself that this is actually the problem you have. On the second side of things, though, is kind of the more recovery specific stuff that you might need to do. So you want to check to see how you're responding to sensations and triggers right now. for people who've had symptoms for a long time and have been coping, as you describe it, pretty well, they still often are responding with this sort of frustration, annoyance kind of narrative to the symptoms that they're having. And we want to see if we can switch that, because again, theme of the Q&A is we are trying to help our brains learn. Okay, so brains learn when there's something new to learn. So if we're doing the same thing over and over that we've always done and expecting something different, that doesn't make sense. The brain's not going to learn from doing the same thing over and over again without anything changing, right? Why would your brain learn something new? So annoyance, frustration, like yuckiness, maybe some avoidance, maybe not doing the things that you really want to do. So we want to work on the responses to sensations. And again, that's where even very simple tools like somatic tracking can be helpful to just practice that kind of response. And then the stress bucket piece. So again, this varies a lot. Some people don't need to do much work here and some people do, but you've had a lot of cumulative stuff going into your stress bucket, wild is life, because not only do you have whatever may have led to the symptoms becoming chronic in the first place, or whatever other stressors you have going on in your life, you've also had to deal with these stinking symptoms for 13 years. And that throws some stress in your bucket, right? Goodness knows what kind of nonsense you've had to deal with over the last 13 years, whether that's misunderstandings with friends and loved ones, or not being able to do what you want from a leisure perspective, or having difficulties going to work, or having days when you feel really crappy and not being able to do the things you want to do. And those are minor. I mean, there can be a lot deeper things that can happen from having to deal with this for a long time. So sometimes that stuff kind of needs to be addressed more directly. And obviously it's very difficult for me to describe in a Q&A to you. I don't know you and your experience. So it's very hard for me to tell you exactly how you might need to address them. But what I want to tell you is that often the answers are actually relatively obvious and in front of your face. So most of the time when I sit down with someone for an hour and talk to them, they can tell me the things that make them feel worse and the things that make them feel better. And sometimes those things are just obviously physical triggers. Like I go to the grocery store, I walk through the aisles. I swear I don't care if I'm in the grocery store or not, but the aisles themselves mess with my eyes. So some of those physical triggers are not necessarily emotional in nature or have anything to do specifically with your stress bucket, but sometimes they do. And those responses basically, I know this is going to be very, very simple and simplified. And so please don't think that I'm trying to be too simplistic about this, but at its core, what I'm asking you to do is look at how you respond to other stressors in your life and ask yourself, how do I make my stress worse? And I know that sounds really accusatory. And let me also scream this from the hilltops. Not a single person here is ever at fault for your symptoms. Ever. Symptoms are never, ever, ever your fault. Okay. There is not a single person here in this chat live or who's watching this Q&A who chose to have the symptoms, who did things deliberately, who was just kind of cavalier and was just like, whatever, fine, I'll take symptoms. None of you chose symptoms. None of you are responsible for symptoms, or none of you are at fault for symptoms. But ultimately, recovery is your responsibility. It has to be. There's no one else who can do it for you. I believe me when I say, if I knew how to take responsibility for it for you, I would totally try to do that, but I can't. So all that being said, when you ask these questions, it can bring up shame. Even with the very neutral way I ask that question, when you ask yourself, how might I be making my own stress worse? That is going to bring up guilt and shame for many of you here. You're going to say, oh my gosh, Yonit is saying that my own brain is responsible for all of my symptoms. And now like I'm at fault and I need to feel guilty about the fact that I'm kind of obsessive or I have high urgency or whatever. No, we just need this information. We have to get this information out of you, because that's the information that tells us what we need to do to help you get better. That's it. It's neutral. It's neutral information. There's no fault in it. It's good data that we need so that we can help you get better. So you need to ask yourself, wild is life, what stress coping strategies you currently use in relationships, in work, in other areas, in symptoms, whatever it is, that actually tend to make stress grow rather than shrink. and ask yourself what you might need to do to not do that. Okay. So that's a simple answer. There is a lot more on this kind of more deliberate stress bucket stuff. What I would advise all of you to do, if you found this question and answer useful, there is a video that is called Stuck. Okay. And it says stuck. So some of you may not have watched it because you're like, I'm not stuck. I just don't know what to do. Okay. But this video, it asks 4 questions. It gives you 4 questions that you can answer for yourself to determine what you actually need to do to get better and what you need your area of focus to be on. So Wild is Life, I suggest that you watch this video because you'll figure out where you might need to start doing your work. And it may not be any of that stress bucket related stuff at all. It may be just reactions to symptoms, but please watch that video. It's in the chat. Yes, I love that. So Danielle, Danielle is saying fake news brain. That is something I said recently. I don't feel like I put that. I feel like that was in one of our private Q&As. I don't think I put that in a YouTube short yet. So I think you guys just got a preview of a short I need to make. But okay, so all right. Yes, this is okay. So here's a question that is being asked here in the chat, and I have an answer for it. So wonderful. So Shannon asked, hello, Daryl. Hello. I'm just waving at you. Okay. I'm having a hard time knowing if I'm having a VM attack or PPPD is flaring. I'm limited to the amount of meds I can take per month. So this stress adds to my bucket. Tips on knowing the difference. Okay. So Shannon, I hope I can give you an answer that is helpful to you, because you have to understand I come from kind of a biased perspective about this. I view neural circuit symptoms coming from vestibular migraine and PPPD as ultimately having the same root cause. And I recognize they are not necessarily the same experience for everyone. I'm not trying to claim that, you guys out there who have a VM attack or, not scared or not having a terrible experience, or that it's the same as when you feel symptoms in between attacks, or I'm not trying to imply that the experience is the same. What I'm trying to say is that in my mind, I go, does it matter which one it is? It doesn't really matter to me in my mind. And Shannon, again, I care about your experience, but in my mind, I say, who cares? It's the same thing. It's a neural circuit problem. Shannon needs to respond in the same way. And I'm not anti-medication at all. I think it's okay to have a rescue medication. And all of you, again, who have a rescue medication, you have my blessing to use medications as an act of radical self-compassion, especially if you're using them as rescues, meaning only occasionally when things are just so intolerable that you need to take it down a notch. But all of us here should be working on gradually increasing our ability to handle high symptoms. We don't want to take a medication every time we have high symptoms. Why? Because by doing that, we're actually teaching the brain that high symptoms are bad. It's not if you're doing this intermittently, guys. Just want to make sure all those of you with anxiety here in the chat are hearing me. I'm not saying that if you ever take medication, you're screwed. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if the only strategy you have to deal with a scary sensation is to turn it off, then your brain learns to fear that sensation. So we want you to experience scary sensations sometimes. Sensations are the medication that your brain actually needs to rewire. Sensations are medicine, and sensations become medicine when you learn how to react to and respond to sensations, fear, anxiety, frustration, annoyance, all those things differently. Because as we've been talking about a lot today, that's how your brain learns. So when it comes to this, Shannon, I can't give you medical advice about when to take a medication. What I can tell you is that in my mind, I want to see you moving toward being able to have bad sensations without needing to turn them off. So in my mind, it's okay that you can only use the medication a few times a month, because actually I don't want you relying on this medication all the time, because otherwise, again, we're just sensitizing your nervous system further. If every time something bad happens or something scary happens, you're like, oh, turn it off, take the medication, quick, it's going to make it worse. That is going to backfire. It's going to give your brain the wrong message. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come to another question that I starred here, and then I'm going to bring on our special guest. So our next guest. Okay. So is it neural circuit dizziness? JWR8657 here on YouTube asked, is it still neural circuit dizziness if it is chronic, but vestibular rehabilitation therapy doesn't provoke it. If you can't provoke it, then how are you supposed to habituate? Great question. Great question. So I see so many people here who ask me this question and who tell me my symptoms are just there all the time, or they're not provoked by these exercises at all. Are these exercises doing anything for me? And to be quite honest, I want to say first, I'm a proponent of VRT, of vestibular rehab therapy. I'm trained in it. I think it's wonderful and helpful, and I send lots of people to do VRT if they've never done it before, or if they have movement provoked symptoms. If the VRT doesn't make you feel bad, then it's not provoking sensations or making them worse. Then it's not doing what it needs to do, and then it's not useful. Okay, because you the point of VRT is to provoke the sensation and teach your brain that sensation is okay, or that it needs to do something new with that particular trigger. So if it's not being triggered at all, it's not able to do either of those things. So let's talk about habituation. Okay, so if you can't provoke it, then how are you supposed to habituate? So this is one of my problems with the framing around vestibular rehab therapy. And again, I want to be clear, especially I know people are popping in and out of that Q&A and they're going to be like, Joni hates VRT. No, I don't hate VRT. I think it's actually super useful. I'm trained in it. I'm a proponent of VRT. But VRT is really designed with a kind of a biomedical model in mind, meaning it looks at the problem as a really mechanical problem. Brain has circuit issue. Brain is misunderstanding sensory information. Give sensory information, brain will rewire. Okay, so it's treating the problem very mechanically. It is not looking at dizziness through a biopsychosocial lens. And here on this channel, we look at dizziness through a biopsychosocial lens, meaning, guess what, guys? You are all whole people. Not a single person here in the chat or on this replay is an ear or a vestibular tract or a nerve. None of you are those things. You are a whole person. And guess what? Things that are happening elsewhere in your body, things that are happening elsewhere in your life and in your mind, all of those things affect what your brain understands about sensory information. So getting better from PPPD or any kind of neural circuit dizziness is not a mere habituation problem where you're just trying to get your nerves to do something, your nerves to get used to something. It is a whole person problem that needs a whole person solution. And that is why I very rarely talk about exercises on my channel. And I spend so much time yammering on, like I am in this Q&A, about how you respond to symptoms and anxiety and emotions and stress and all that stuff, because those are the things that actually keep this circuit locked into place. The habituation part, I know this is going to sound absolutely mad. Okay, everyone, I'm about to say something that's going to sound insane. Habituation is the easy part. That's not the hard part. Your brain can figure things out. Your brain's default state is steady. Your brain can return to steadiness and find steadiness again on its own when we get whatever is keeping it stuck out of the way. So none of you have the job of trying to force yourselves into habituation or steadiness. Your job is to get out of the way of the natural adaptation process that your brain can use to get you back to being steady. And what gets in the way of that process is stuff like anxiety, vigilance, focus on sensations, stress, unaddressed emotional stuff, trauma, etc. All those things. Not any one of those things exclusively, especially if you're on this channel, you're going to see a lot of people with multiple things going on. But our job is to get out of its way. And that's the stuff that I'm talking about on my channel. So JWR, I want you to know that from my perspective, habituation will happen naturally from living your life. Again, not saying no one should do VRT. We can talk about the role of VRT if you guys want to, but your brain will habituate naturally when the things that are preventing it from adapting or habituating are out of the way. Okay, and with that, I want to bring on our next guest. So I told you guys there would be someone else coming here who you know and love. So, hello, Joella. I'm going to welcome Joella. Hello. I'm going to put my headphones back
Hello.
on because I can't hear you. There we go. Hello. You got the
Hi.
memo about the black. I see. Hello.
Yeah, obviously. Hello. Congratulations.
Hello. Thank you.
I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
to be here.
Yeah, this is very cool. I hope this I was telling everyone here that this is the first Q&A I've done in a really long time. I mean, I think it's been years, and it is crazy that I now get to have you and Pippa on here with me. This is so much better. So much better than
I
talking
thinking like
myself 2
I
hours.
think when I found you, you had like 2 or 3,000 followers.
Yeah, yep, yep.
And of course, when I found you, I was desperate for everything that you had to say, and I could only have dreamed to have been here a
Oh
few
my
years
gosh.
later. Thank
Crazy.
you.
Okay, okay. Which reminds me, for those of you who don't know, they're like, Joella, she's wonderful, but who is she? Joella has a success story on our channel. So we're going to put that in the chat. So here she is. And Joella is a coach who works at the Steady Coach, and she leads our beginners coaching sessions usually every Wednesday. Sometimes they move around, but usually they're Wednesdays. And she also sees private clients, and she also has some wisdom to share today. So we picked some of the questions that were asked in advance, and we're going to bring those up on the screen, but feel free to also ask questions live, and we'll see if anything comes up that we can get to. So here we go. So, and for those of you who don't know Joella personally recovered from MDDS. So I'm wondering, before I get into the questions, I'm totally going to put you on the spot. Sorry, Joella. Joella's like, great. My first time on a live
Sure.
Q&A, and I'm going to be on the spot. But I'm wondering if you might have anything to say about how people perceive MDDS recovery versus like PPPD or vestibular migraine, because I see a lot more hopelessness from people
Mm.
who had that particular diagnosis. And I'm wondering if you had anything to say before we start answering questions.
Yeah, I think that and I'm not sure. I don't think we've even had this discussion. Like, I'm not sure where that exactly comes from, but the MDDS community in particular just really feels there's this sense of despair, and I think that comes from the research of this hopeless, you will never get better, and the doom that is so pervasive in the communities inside those groups. And I know that put me down a really dark path, and I am not exactly sure like how we split hairs, but I think it's so important that we talk about how neural circuit dizziness is just neural circuit dizziness, right? And we don't need to get into the weeds of is this triple PD or is this MDDS? We are dealing with the same thing, and the less we can identify with that, and the more we can hold onto the hope of getting better and getting back to feeling at home in our own bodies again, is ultimately the medicine.
Thank you. Yep. 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 And we try to be very careful about how we say this, because we're not trying to imply again that your experience is the same as everyone else's. And
Yeah.
there's a special kind of hell associated with each one of these symptom clusters. But the ultimate message is it's a programming issue. Programming
Yes.
issues can be addressed. Programming issues can be reversed. So this is not just because you have a particular set of symptoms does not mean that you're stuck in a way that someone else
Mm-hmm.
isn't. And also,
Mm-hmm.
Joella, the number of people we see in the community who show up with a particular diagnosis, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, they could have diagnosed you with any of it. I mean,
Oh,
right? They have PPPD
100%.
symptoms, but they're diagnosed with MDDS, or they have MDDS symptoms, they're diagnosed with PPPD. There's such an overlap.
Vestibular migraine, and they're like, and I have zero migraine. Like, we were just talking about this on beginners coaching. They're like, why would I be diagnosed with vestibular migraine? I don't have any headaches, So yeah, there's yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I figured you'd have something to say about that. So, okay. I love this question. So, this was asked by Matilda. She says, how does one address sensations when you're not afraid of them anymore, just annoyed by them? And then she says, she ends up with doubts too. Like, what if they never go away? What if I'm stuck like this forever?
Yeah, yeah. So I think first of all, we see this all the time, right? Like, I think initially we just have this really heightened fear of what is this? Oh my gosh. And then as we start to somatic track and we start to understand and relate to the symptoms differently, it sort of ebbs into this just ugh, like, why isn't this going away? And this sort of pervasive frustration that sort of just lingers, and it can be a really hard state to be in. So I sort of love the idea of Alan Gordon talks about this. He talks about not necessarily fear of symptoms, but he calls it preoccupation of symptoms, right? And I love that because I think we get stuck in this idea, well, I'm not afraid of the symptoms anymore. But it doesn't have to be fear, right? If we are still frustrated, if we're still obsessing, if we're still scanning, if we are still living our lives where we are always looking and having an emotional charge, whatever that is, towards the symptom, there's probably still some symptom work that needs to be addressed. And one of the questions I love to ask people is, if I told you in 6 months you will be symptom free, would you still be afraid of the symptoms? And I so often hear, well, no, like they would be uncomfortable, but I wouldn't necessarily be afraid. And I think this kind of alludes to Matilda's like second part of her question, right? Where it's like, I I think sometimes the fear is more of the story than of the symptoms. Can be, right? I think initially we have this really fear of like, what is this? And so I would almost challenge gently here and say, is there still work to be done with the fear? Because that story is still loud. It's, will this ever go away? Will I be living a 2/3 life? And these are questions I ask myself. Trust me, I know them all too well. And so I think there's there's opportunity here to sort of continue some symptom work even.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yep. And I and so Vanessa Blackstone, she has a workbook. It's right behind me, actually. It is right. Where is it? The pain reprocessing therapy workbook. It's right behind me. They talk about flavors of fear, and they
Mm,
talk about how frustration and annoyance are just merely fear wearing a different mask, essentially a different flavor of fear. So
yeah,
even if you're not afraid or, feeling fight or flight sensations, that doesn't mean that you're not, as you're saying, Joella, preoccupied with sensations and still, um, and still kind of stuck in them. So I'm wondering, do you have any specific suggestions for how someone might start to work on this? I have some ideas for her.
yeah. So this would come for me like, again, I know so many of us when we do somatic tracking. I really love the way tracking can move through your recovery, right? And I think that we can look at it from this, well, we're changing our association with the fear, but as we move through recovery, is there a space where we use that muscle that we've sort of flexed and we just tweak it a little bit and create presence with our symptoms and and listen and almost use like a parts work mentality with the symptoms? Can we create some presence? I'd also encourage her to look at rumination fixers, intrusive thoughts work, those types of things, and just seeing if there's anything there that can be helpful. But I'd love to hear what other things can pop in for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what's coming to mind is that video I put out recently about the long tail of recovery. So that was a really fresh take, I think, something I haven't really talked about before. I mean, I've talked about the long tail before, but I talk a lot about the kinds of things you can focus on rather than things that I don't want you to focus on. So I'm gonna put that video in the chat. And it's called Feeling Better, but Recovery is Dragging On. And the thumbnail says Feeling Better is a Trap. And I talk about sort of the things that can kind of get you stuck in this sort of annoyed by my symptoms. I'm living my life, but I'm uncomfortable and I'm kind of annoyed, but I'm not really scared anymore. I give you some fresh suggestions on what you can do about it. So just some more thoughts in that video as well.
Yeah,
And yeah, just
that
wanted
video is
to
great.
thank you. Thank you. I thought again, it was fun to get to talk about stuff outside of stress and symptoms. So, I noticed people here in the chat, a few people saying, "Yeah, migraines don't have to have pain. Aura migraines are painless," and this is true. So we're not trying to say that people don't have migraines just because they don't have pain. I guess the overarching point we're trying to make is that migraines, whether they're happening or not, so yes, they are physical phenomena, whether you have pain or not. Um, they're not just an inevitable thing that just happens to you and then you have to deal with them. They are also part of a neural circuit problem. So I will actually have a video coming about this. This is long overdue, a new video about migraine and vestibular migraine. So please, for those of you who are not subscribed, please be sure to subscribe to the channel so I can notify you when that video comes out. I think it'll be 2 or 3 weeks from now. I think that'll help address some of these migraine specific questions as well. Okay, so Ghost Love 92 Cat. Okay, so this is part of her question, but I think I'm going to come back and read the context because I think it was relevant. So one second, let me just pull that up. So she says, okay, so basically her symptoms flared up before, during, and after a flight when I experienced my first big mental breakdown and huge job loss. I did a few rounds of vestibular rehab. Eventually it went away on its own, but it's still, she's still going through ups and downs. And she says, I've flown to Mexico. I've been on a boat and been fine. But for some reason, I'm utterly terrified of flying now. And I have a work trip of a lifetime coming up in June. And my fear is preventing me from committing, which just breaks my heart. She's just tired of missing out on life because of this. So her question is, like, first of all, just like let's talk about this. But also, if I felt worse in the plane and not better, does that mean it wasn't a neural circuit issue? And then can someone still fly with this if it's mostly gone? Like, is this just going to happen again? What do I do? I hear she didn't ask that particular second part of the question, but I'm hearing, I'm so sick of missing out on my life. What do I do with this? So what are your thoughts on this, Joella?
I don't think that what she's describing exempts her from neural circuit dizziness, right? And again, I think that this might be a label thing, right? As far as we sometimes get hung up on, well, like, what are the buckets, and is it this or is it that? And so I would definitely advise on, one of the biggest challenges for me when I was doing this is like separating myself from this syndrome, from this thing that was really heavy and big and hard, and not internalizing it, right? And creating a little bit of space, and that it is something that is happening to me. And I saw somebody else, so I mentioned this in the chat, like the idea of the syndrome, right? So I wanted to kind of just touch on that. So I absolutely think that this is can be neural circuit. Like, I don't think that what she's describing exempts her from that. But yeah, like, see, absolutely you can fly. I know so many people in the community who fly and they feel okay. I mean, you just said that you went to Mexico. There are so many beautiful things and experiences that I would hate for you to miss out on, because this fear is taking over. You know, some tactical things that you can look at. Like, I don't often recommend visualization, but the people in my group know that for trips, visualization can be so beautiful and can be really, really helpful to help create prediction, right? And I think what you're looking at here is a prediction and an expectation error that's happening. And I'd love to sort of address have you start to address that a little bit, and create the prediction that you can do this and that you can be okay. And, having sort of this plan A, but also having a plan B of like, what are the tools that you have that you use that can help you in this trip?
Yeah, this sort of piggybacks on what Pippa and I were talking about earlier. We need to, so I say this with all the empathy and the shared, I have heard so many people going through this experience, and my heart just breaks hearing this. So I know the fear and terror. I have seen it so many times. And at the same time, we have to stop judging success by what happens to sensations. And the day that you do that, Ghost Love 92 Cat, whose name might be Cat, I don't know. I'm going to say Ghost Love. The day you stop judging your success by what happens to the symptoms is the day you're free of this crap. It's the day you're free, because what's happening right now is you're not just saying I'm going to end up with sensations. You're predicting I'm going to have sensations. It's going to be bad. I'm going to get stuck with it forever. I'm not going to know what to do with it. I'm going to get scared. It's going to be awful. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're kind of, all of that is weighing on you. And that's part of this prediction that Joella was talking about. That is actually, unfortunately, going to make it more likely that you don't feel good. So in order to free yourself of that, you need to be able to go into situations like flying, like going on a boat. You mentioned going on a boat, and say to yourself, I know what to do. I know what to do. And if sensations happen, then I know what to do with those. And if fear happens, I know what to do with that. And the more confident you feel in that, the less fearful you'll be of them happening in the first place, and then the less likely they are to happen. So that's kind of the message I want to convey about what you should do about this. But I also want to provide some reassurance and tell you I've been on YouTube for 5, 6 years, something like that. I've had an online community for at least, I think, 5 years now. And I have seen literally hundreds of group coaching participants take flights, and literally hundreds of them take flights while they're in the recovery process. And every single one of them comes back and makes this huge post about how awesome it was and how happy they are that they did it. And some of them didn't feel great. Some of them felt amazing. Actually, the majority of them are like, Yonit, it's so weird. I was on the plane and then I was in this new place and I actually felt way better than I do at home. And then I came home and it was like, oh my gosh, that was so great. And then I have to go back to the grind and I'm like, darn it, there are the sensations again. But the overall, people actually often will feel better when they're flying or when they're traveling because their brains are like, oh, I don't have any associations with this thing. But in your case, okay, so your brain has had an association, a particular difficult experience on a plane. So maybe you'll be one of the people who has a flight that's not ideal. That does not mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you're back to square one. It doesn't mean you're stuck with this forever. It means you have a huge opportunity to create a brand new experience for your brain. If you have sensations before, during, and after the flight, and you respond to those sensations very differently from how you did the first time, your brain just learned something. So this is your opportunity. That's all I got to say. So, okay. What do you think, Joella? Anything to add to that?
No, I say, this thing takes a lot. So if you don't have to miss out on more.
Yeah. Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay. So we have a question here from, so we talked about this a little bit earlier with Pippa, but I thought you might want to weigh in on this too. So Megan Cassidy, 618, also on YouTube, she asked, do these principles work for symptoms that are outside of the dizziness and visual symptoms domain? How about bladder issues?
Oh, yeah. This one's near and dear to my heart. Yes, yeah. The techniques can be applied to just about anything your brain is going to throw at you, from whether it's neuroplastic, whether it's structural. So you kind of were talking about like almost everything is biopsychosocial, right?
All symptoms are
so-
biopsychosocial. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
All symptoms
Yeah.
are biopsychosocial. Yes.
So even if you do have structural pain, so in some transparency, I've struggled with bladder issues in the last year. And so I get this struggle, and they were biological, they were structural, right? However, the tools that I use and I had learned here, they still changed my relationship to pain. They still worked, they still brought things down. And so absolutely, even if you are in the throes of another symptom, or in your brain is doing something, or even if it is a real infection or a real whatever, we can use these tools. These tools are so beautiful, and I love that. I think that's why I love them, this work so much, is because we can take it beyond symptoms, right? We can take this to emotional work. How do you relate to fight you had? How do you stay present with yourself? This stuff works for so much in your life, and I would not be where I am today if I had not become dizzy. And I know that sounds so cliche and gross, like where it's like, I'm so thankful for my symptoms, but I actually, for the first time, caught myself saying that the other day, and I was like, because these tools, these skills, they transcend your dizzy journey. And so I know I'm a little bit in left field here, but absolutely yes for bladder, yes for any sort of physical sensation. Emotional, I mean, it all presence with yourself and nervous system regulation is something that you can use throughout your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And thank you for mentioning that this works. This stuff helps people who have structural issues. I heard Okay, a couple things I want to add. Just first of all, for the vast majority of you, there aren't any structural issues. So welcome to
Yeah.
the I don't want to say party, but welcome to the tribe group chat here. Welcome to the chat. We see with dizziness in particular, we see so many symptoms that I promise you, if you were here in the chat going, "Oh yeah, but no one has this one," I promise you, you are wrong. You are wrong. There is someone else in the chat right now who has the same symptom you have. So if it's the main entry criteria for this, for having a neural circuit issue, is that there's nothing medical or structural that explains your symptoms. And for those of you for whom that is the case, then these techniques that we talk about here, these principles work for any of it. They work for any of it, whether you have problems with your toes or with your ears or anything else on your body. But for those of you who have what I think of as a hybrid condition, so we talked earlier in the Q&A about how all symptoms are biopsychosocial, and that means that there's always some kind of biological component. There's always some kind of psychological component, meaning the way that you think, feel, etc., plays into this, and social, meaning the context, your connection to other people, the safety in your life, etc. All symptoms work that way, even when there is something structural going on. So for some of you, someone alluded to Meniere's. Meniere's is what I think of when someone actually has Meniere's, which not everyone who's diagnosed with Meniere's actually does. But when someone has an actual issue like Meniere's disease, there may be some kind of biological damage in the ear that is causing symptoms to an extent, but it's ultimately the brain is the arbiter of truth. The brain decides what you experience, and your brain can decide that you're experiencing very bad, dangerous, threatening things if it's in threat mode and your stress bucket's overflowing, or your brain can react much more mildly to things when your stress bucket's not overflowing. So although the expectations may be a little bit different if you have some kind of structural problem that's continually adding symptoms to your plate, you can still improve dramatically. And I've seen it happen. We've had people come through the group with things like Meniere's or other structural problems or autoimmune diseases. I see that sometimes too. You can still improve your symptoms, improve your quality of life, and make yourself more resilient. So I just want to speak to you. I know many of you, because of Curable, I've been doing talks on Curable. Joella, you know this. And those of you who don't know, Curable is an app that it was originally developed for chronic pain, but I really love sending people to it, especially if you're new to this. It's a really helpful app, and it's low cost, which I think is very important. As you guys know, I'm really big on things like free education for people. I do talks on Curable periodically. I give classes there, like hour-long classes, and we go into some of this stuff a little bit more in depth. So sorry, I forgot what I was saying, Joella. Put me back on track. I'm going to put the Curable link in the chat. Well,
we're talking about biopsychosocial structural.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So the point is, there's the Curable link in the chat. Curable is, and a lot of these other techniques are helpful for people even when they have some kind of structural problem. That's what I was trying to get to. Okay. Well, anyway, Joella, I know I've got to let you go. Thank you so much for being here. And now, again, kind of like what I did with Pippa, I sneak attacked her with love. So I'm gonna sneak attack you with love too, and just tell you that I'm just again blessed beyond belief that you are that you're here with us. I would never put this on you because you're the only one who's allowed to say something like this, but I'm glad to hear that you are glad that the symptoms happened to some degree, because it put you in my life, and it brought you to this community that desperately needs you. We need you, and the work you do with the beginners in the group is so impactful and helps. It has helped people so much when they first get in the group. Sometimes it can be so overwhelming. So just knowing you're there, welcoming them, helping them find buttons in the community if they need that, or just helping answers, just kind of okay, what do I actually do with the somatic tracking on day one kinds of questions. It has made a huge difference for them. So I cannot thank you enough. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us, all of us, for me, and for all of us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I'm so blessed to be part of this community. When I got dizzy and I was part of the community and I felt so welcomed, and I just knew I wanted to help other people get there. So thank you for the opportunity, and congratulations on this amazing milestone.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in, so those, I know that those of you who are in the chat have heard me say this, and I'm sorry to use a pun, but this is now a movement. This isn't just me giving information. We're changing how these vestibular problems and other symptoms are being treated. It is happening. It's changing on the ground. And you are part of it, Joella. So and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. And thank you for coming on your Friday afternoon too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a good Friday night.
Everybody. Bye.
All right, folks. So thank you to Joella one more time. Isn't it cool that I get to not be the only person talking for 2 hours? I personally am finding it very cool. So anyway, now she goes back to talking. So we're going to answer more questions. I have a few more that I pulled. Actually, I wanted to pull one from Instagram. So we had a really interesting question on Instagram from earlier. Okay. Oh, so, and some amazing comments. So just wanted to mention, I said this earlier in the Q&A, but I think if you're coming in later, you should hear it. And if you heard it already, you should hear it again. Hope is medicine, not in a woo kind of way, but when threat mode is the problem and the threat response cycle is what's keeping you stuck in symptoms, your medicine is safety, and hope is the first dose of safety that you can possibly get. So that is one thing that I am so incredibly grateful for. I cannot thank you enough for making my YouTube channel and my Instagram a positive place. You guys are the most unbelievably wonderful people. It is the privilege of my life to be able to help at all, but to help people like you is just unbelievable. It's just a privilege that I can't even describe. So know that you're always welcome to ask your questions and talk about your struggles, and people do, but so many times, so many of you come back to the channel and say, I'm improving, or I'm doing better, or I had this win. Please keep doing that on the Instagram, on Facebook, even though I rarely look at Facebook. Sorry, I'm probably not supposed to say that out loud, but I did. Instagram, especially YouTube. Just know that other people are getting medicine. They are getting a dose of medicine from your comments. So thank you again. I'm just looking at these comments on Instagram, trying to find this one question that was asked, and I'm being met with this slew of amazing comments from people who are saying I'm doing so much better. So amazing stuff. Okay, so Hillary, this was the question I wanted to answer, and then following Jesus 327. I'm going to talk about perimenopause in a second. So just hang on a second. I'm coming for you. Okay. You had some great questions, by the way, and I'm not going to be able to answer all of them, but I do want to answer Hillary's question here. So Hillary, we'll see if you're here. I don't know if you're here on YouTube right now, but she asked, why does laying down bring on rocking sensations? Mostly, and she says, I'm back to living normal life, mostly without sensations throughout the day, which is amazing. So it sounds like Hillary has rocking when lying down. So it sounds like Hillary has improved a lot and is feeling a whole lot better, but she's still experiencing some sensations when lying down. And I think I'm going to back up, even though it sounds like Hillary may be a little farther along in the recovery. I'm going to back up a little bit and say that I want to speak a little bit about why you might have sensations in certain environments and not in others, or not doing something or doing something or what have you. So, right. Yeah. And Ghost Love 92 Cat is saying that lying down feels better for her. Exactly. This is one of the curiosities of neural circuit dizziness, but this is common. What Hillary is describing, rocking when lying down and not when up and about. And the simplest explanation for this, the simplest answer is that your brain creates associations between certain environments and threat or symptoms. Okay. So as all of you know, or I assume, because most of you have been maybe on the Q&A for a little while or have been on my channel before, brains perceive stuff through a process called predictive processing. So brains use predictions to determine what it is that you're going to experience, meaning your brain says, I think this is going to happen. Let me compare the information I'm getting in this environment to what my predictions are. And that's the experience I'm going to pop out. And that also drives future predictions. So this comparison process drives future predictions. So if your brain says, hey, bed is a dangerous place and bed is a place where we have rocking sensations, then it sort of runs the rocking program, even if there's no specific reason why it should. There are some specific reasons why it should, but again, the most important thing I want everyone to understand here is that your brain can create associations between certain environments, movements, triggers, etc., that don't necessarily make sense from any kind of vestibular perspective. It just means your brain is predicting this particular response in this particular environment or in response to this particular trigger. Now, as far as the lying down goes, so okay, a few thoughts for you, Hillary, and you'll have to decide if any, like, what if any of this is relevant to you. But often mild background sway or mild background rocking is actually sort of present all the time. And actually, even with people who don't have dizziness. So our postural control system, basically our equilibrium system and our orientation system, are always kind of working in the background to adjust our body positions and filter out things that we don't need to know about. So if any of you are, I don't know if any of you are standing right now, but even if you're sitting upright, I'm sitting upright. My body is moving the entire time, but I'm not noticing it because my brain's like, oh, that little bit of movement was just from breathing, or that little bit of movement was from, her back just moving very slightly to the left or right. It's not important for your need to know that because she's sitting still and she seems to be stable. So everything's fine. We don't need to let her know about it. So you can sort of think of this, Hillary, like your brain is just kind of filtering that stuff out when it thinks it's not important. But it may be that when you get in bed at night and you actually are resting, your brain's like, cool, we are experiencing this and there's nothing around us that's sort of distracting us from this sensation that's always there, and it automatically draws your focus to it. Again, not saying that the rocking you're experiencing right now is normal, but what I'm saying is movement, some small amount of movement always is normal. You're never still. If any of you are alive here, you are never still. You are never still. So your brain is always filtering out some small amount of movement, and your brain may be just responding to movement that's already there, and it's just amplifying it and paying attention to it when you're in bed because you're not busy. So I'm sorry to be repetitive, but I here we go. We're going to be a little repetitive, but repetition is good because the principles are very simple. Actually, principles of recovery are very simple. So the key here then is to help create a new association between this environment and the sensations and what it is that you're doing. So it makes me wonder, Hillary, if toward the end of the day when you're lying down, if the rocking is still provoking some of that frustration and annoyance and focus and maybe a little bit of fear or what have you, or if you're like completely, if you're able to be relatively neutral to it. So that's the very first thing that I would work on if you're finding that if you look at it honestly and you say, actually, my reactions could use a little bit of help here, then that's the first thing I would work on. The other thing is that sometimes, for those of you especially who have a lot of anxiety, that approach that I just mentioned is actually the exact opposite of the approach that works. So, Hillary, if you are dealing with anxiety and sort of a lot of tension and focus on this, and that's been part of your recovery process, then it may be that actually trying to focus on responding more neutrally to sensations is the wrong approach because it has actually paradoxically focusing you on the sensation. So when we're trying to do something to sensations, anything, being neutral to or regulating, whatever it is, we actually are feeding the message or feeding the brain the message, hey, you should pay more attention to this thing. So if that's the case for you, then we want to do things like not resist the sensations. So A is get into, I guess, more of a Claire Weeks mentality, like loosen and allow the sensations. So for those of you who are not familiar, Claire Weeks is She was a pioneer in the anxiety world, and she's got some great audiobooks you can find here on YouTube. You can also buy her books. Hope and Help for Your Nerves. Hope and Help for Your Nerves is one of her one of the favorites in the community. How many of us have OCD? Oh my gosh, we need to talk about that. So that just came up in the chat. Okay. But Claire Weeks is awesome for this kind of stuff. So just learning to just relax and allow the sensations to be there, and you don't have to do anything special to them. And then asking yourself, what else in my life, what other things am I doing in my life, or what other things in my life are keeping my nervous system kind of on edge in this way? And when my nervous system is on edge, it's gonna be more likely to pick out specific associations with dangerous things. Okay, I mean, it's going to be more likely to find things threatening when they're not threatening. Final idea, Hillary, I talked about this much earlier in the Q&A. I don't know if you heard it, but I was talking about breaking associations and how if you have a new experience that helps break the association. So another thing that people can do that's really simple is, instead of going to bed saying, okay, I need to address this rocking, saying, I want more rocking, like the Bring It On approach. For those of you who aren't familiar, you can say to your brain, fine, okay, give me more rocking, give me as much rocking as possible. And a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of fearlessness when it comes to the sensations will often again give your brain a new experience. Instead of the experience of frustration or focus or annoyance, you're doing the opposite of what your brain expects, and that sparks learning. Again, the name of the game today is learning. We want your brain to learn new stuff. So to teach your brain new stuff, your brain has to have new experiences. So you can create new experiences in many ways. Okay. Yes, I see. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Interesting. It's interesting, Isa. Hello. Okay. And I see Atlantic from the Czech Republic here. And I see Kuka from Finland. It really is a global community. This is absolutely a global community. Okay, so what was oh yes, so the question I wanted to get to was the perimenopause question. So apologies to gentlemen in the chat. This is actually, I think, still going to be relevant to really anyone, but I am going to speak specifically about hormones for a moment here. So I have a video about hormones. It's probably, honestly, it's probably one that I really need to update, because I've learned a lot since I made that video, and I can probably say it in a much better way now, to be honest. I mean, I've gotten better at communicating over the years, so, which is good, because now you all benefit from that. But part of that is being able to do Q&As like this and getting asked so many good questions over and over again. So I've gotten better at knowing how to respond to questions. So thank you all so much for that. You're honestly the reason that I've gotten better at being able to help people. So, okay. So hormones affect the stress bucket. So we've been talking about the stress bucket a lot. For those of you just tuning in, the stress bucket is just kind of a cumulative bucket that carries all the different things in your life that can cause stress. And when it overflows, that's when your nervous system gets really sensitive and says, oh my gosh, I'm in horrible danger. And it starts tagging things that aren't actually dangerous as dangerous. And things that go in your bucket can be things like work stress or life stress, symptom-related stress, anxiety, perfectionism. We're not going to get too far into the weeds on the stress bucket, but just to give you sort of an idea. So when people have fluctuations in hormones, so it's not so much necessarily about the level of hormones someone has, although I've seen people, both men and women, have changes in hormone or abnormalities in hormones that actually are a physical contributor to dizziness, because obviously there are medical causes of dizziness too. What's typically happening when someone has neural circuit dizziness and they notice changes in their symptoms with hormonal changes, it's not so much the level of the hormones themselves. Typically, it's that the fluctuations of the hormones destabilize the stress bucket. To put it more simply, when you have changes in perimenopause, what's happening is your hormones are fluctuating wildly. You have wild peaks and valleys in your hormones. And every time that happens, your stress bucket shrinks. So if, let's just say, you have a stress bucket that's just full of a whole bunch of stress, but you're like this far away from the top. So your stress bucket's kind of managing to contain all the stress, and your brain's not in total alert mode all the time. In perimenopause, what can happen is the hormones make your bucket smaller. So now stress that otherwise wouldn't have overflowed your bucket is now overflowing your bucket. Or as I like to say, suddenly a lost toothbrush overflows your bucket because your bucket has become so small. So this is where, so the follow-up question people will often ask is, okay, so what am I supposed to do about this? And okay, I want to tell you guys, this is one of the things that really upsets me, that we just do not have research on this. Obviously, I am very open-minded. I talk about a lot of things that we don't have randomized controlled trials on here because frankly, this information needs to be out there. This saves lives. And the stuff I'm talking about on my channel is based on solid evidence, and it's practical, free, not harmful stuff that everyone should have access to, at least trying to help themselves with. So I have no qualms about talking about things that don't have like giant randomized control trials behind them, but we have no research on this. We have no research on whether things like hormone replacement therapy or other options for perimenopause or other hormonal fluctuations can actually help with chronic dizziness or other chronic symptoms for that matter. So I can only tell you, I can't give you any medical advice on this. I can only tell you what I've seen through my anecdotal experience and what makes sense to me conceptually based on what I understand about this. I'm not saying any of you need to take hormones, but it follows logically that if it's the changes in hormones that are leading to the stress bucket becoming so much more sensitive and small, that if we reduce the fluctuations in hormones, if the hormones aren't changing quite as wildly, and often that's what we see when someone has hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, then it would follow that your stress bucket would stay more robust and bigger, and it wouldn't be as likely to overflow. So it's not that it would directly cure symptoms. I've seen a lot of women use HRT in my coaching group. I'm not saying it's a cure, but if it makes the stress bucket more robust, it probably makes it easier to get your stress levels, the bucket levels down enough that it's easier to recover. Okay. So that's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. Kind of one of my pet peeves that we don't have more information about this. Okay. So yeah, about OCD. Oh, does menopause make it stop is a question. I can't tell you data. So the answer is I don't know. However, I think if someone is otherwise healthy, and their system has adapted to menopause, I would expect it to stabilize. I would expect the stress bucket to be restored when the hormones stop fluctuating. That's my expectation, but I can't speak using data. So RJF is talking about OCD, and OCD, I have extreme OCD, and now if I did it and I got dizzy, I avoid it. That's why I ask about OCD and how many of us have it. This is my soapbox for 2026. And it's not just OCD, because many of you in the chat don't have OCD. You don't have obsessive compulsive disorder. You've never had obsessions and compulsions, but you have health anxiety. And health anxiety looks a whole lot like OCD in terms of how it operates. You still end up with obsessions and compulsions. It's just the compulsions look more like internal ruminating and thinking about things and avoiding things and making doctor's appointments and Googling. So if you have OCD, you absolutely belong here. Dizziness, you can still have neural circuit dizziness when you have OCD, but OCD can be the big gasoline that's being poured on the fire that's keeping it going. So if you suspect you have health anxiety or OCD as the cause or as the fuel, not the cause. It's not that it causes dizziness. It's that it keeps dizziness going. I want to be very clear about that. I have a lot of resources for you. The most important one is probably this video that I put out relatively recently, and it's called Fixing Fear and Doubts, Why Nothing is Working. Because what I've noticed over the years is that there is a small subset of people in the community who just were not getting better. And in fact, they were getting worse. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, that's just so like not okay. I want people to get better. And I noticed that what was happening was these people with health anxiety, they were doing more and more and more to try to help themselves get better. They were like the best A+ students. They were doing therapy. They were doing emotions. They were doing journaling. They were doing somatic tracking. They were the most A+ students you can imagine. The problem was all of that was making the OCD worse and worse. Their anxiety was just going up and up and up and up and up. And anxiety and fear obviously do not make the threat response go down. They make the threat response go up. And of course, we've been talking about this a lot in the Q&A. What keeps chronic dizziness symptoms going is the threat response. So we need to make sure we're addressing the threat response. Yeah. So health anxiety should be classified as OCD in my completely unprofessional opinion, because I'm not a mental health professional. But thank you, Sarah. Sarah gave me a super sticker. I didn't even know that was a possibility. So thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate it. I really it I feel like you'd think I'd know such things after being on YouTube for a while, and now that I have 50K subscribers, you'd think I'd know such things, but I don't. So thank you so much. It means a lot to me, and I really appreciate all of your support. And I guess we're at the end of our Q&A. I got a ton of questions in today, and I hope all of you learned something, or at least got good vibes from the chat, maybe a little bit of hope, maybe a little bit of camaraderie. I would really love to do this again, and I'd also love to do it at a uh, at a time when some of our Australian viewers can tune in, and some of the people out in the Far East, because I know they couldn't make it due to the time zone. So stay tuned. Maybe we'll do another one of these Q&As soon. This was again just it is such a privilege to have all of you here, to have you as my audience, to know that what I'm doing makes a difference is just it is just the pinnacle of my life. It is the absolute privilege of my life. I am grateful beyond measure, beyond words for everything. And I promise you that I am not letting up. I am buckling down. Is that a word? Is that a phrase? I don't know. I am I am I'm I am pushing through. I'm pushing on in a good way, not in the ignoring way with symptoms, not that way, but in the like this the more people subscribe, the more I'm like, okay, this is really a problem. Like this is really a bad problem, and we need to do something about this. So I promise you, I am talking to doctors behind the scenes. A lot of stuff goes on behind the scenes besides the coaching group and the providers course that I'm building and all that stuff. I am talking to doctors all the time. I'm talking to therapists, vestibular therapists. I'm 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 trying to get the word out there. So because I know that so many of you would not be here on this YouTube channel if you had been met on day one with the right information. And I I vow that I will not stop until that changes. So I thank you guys so much for the support. You're part of the movement by being here. So thank you. Again, no pun intended. Thank you so much. Wow. Okay. So yeah, I like almost don't want to get off. Like, let's just keep going. Let's just spend another hour chatting on a Friday afternoon. But thank you all so much for being here. If you have follow-up questions on this Q&A, drop them in the comment section, and I will come visit the post and see if I can get to some of those questions. And again, if you're interested, let me know that you want more live Q&As. We can do some more. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Cannot say thank you enough. I'm excited, and my adrenaline is high from the Q&A. So I'm not gonna just like pause and cry from this right now, but I just want you to know it means everything to me that you're here. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and I will talk to you soon. Be well and stay in touch. Let me know about your successes. Remember, hope is medicine. Put your hope in the comments. Bye, everyone.